return with Ferrari Racing Days and the second round of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge North America Series. A world-class facility hosting arguably one of the most recognized automotive marques in history. It's time to let the horses run.
Conditions very different to when we left them yesterday at the end of the Trofeo Pirelli race, and that means that qualifying is going to be even more important. This is effectively a sighting opportunity for the drivers before going out for the fourth race of the championship season. This, the second round of the 2023 Ferrari Challenge North America. Where did we kick things off? Well, that was Homestead, Miami Speedway, the beginning of March, where it was hot and sticky. Now we're at Circuit of the Americas, where it is anything but, heading next to Road Atlanta in the end of May. Then off to Montreal to get to race with Formula One in the middle of June. Wine Country comes up in the end of July, and then Cheese Country, Road America, for the beginning of September, with a long break leading over to Italy for the Finale Mondiale at Mugello this year. Great calendar. But Brian Till, we are here in the great state of Texas, and before we get things kicked off, where exactly are we?
Well, the good news is we've warmed up today from earlier this morning, 1 entire degree. We are just outside of Austin, the capital of the great state of Texas, my home state. Circuit of the Americas, the only purpose-built Formula One racetrack currently in the United States. And what a facility it is, and the wind blowing hard here, but what a great racetrack for these Ferrari Challenge drivers. Everybody really who competing here this weekend in Ferrari Racing Days. 3.4 miles, 20 turns, and you start the lap with a 5-story climb to turn 1. Heavy braking at the top, nice slow turn 1, but it can be exciting at the start of the race, that's for sure. Then plunge down the hill, turns 2 through 10, high-speed S's where the car needs to transition well side to side at kind of ever-decreasing speeds. Then the run down the hill to turn 11, one of the slowest corners on the racetrack that leads to 165-plus mile-an-hour straightaway. Heavy braking into 12, and then from turn 12 all the way to turn 16, 17, another transitional area of the racetrack where the car has to work well, moving the weight quickly from side to side to get through. Plunge down the hill out of 19, high-speed exit down to turn 20. You can make or break 2 laps in turn 20. You can ruin the lap you're on and ruin the lap you're about to start if you don't get the exit of turn 20 correct.
Giant American flag is on full display as the wind has actually picked up quite a bit since the first qualifying session, up to 35 kilometers an hour. And it is a headwind into turn 1, a tailwind coming down the back straight. Bit of an all-around wind circulating out there, and the air temperature not really warming up. Amanda, you're out there in the elements. We're using your hair as the wind barometer, but have your hands thawed out yet?
No, you can see they're bundled up to me. I don't know what forecast Brian Till is looking at, but I do not think that there is 1 degree even to the positive down here in terms of weather. But you take a look here, we do have the wet tires waiting as well as the slicks to go out here today. And that just is indication for the Trofeo Pirelli race later on. The start time shows that there could be rain. So that's going to make this qualifying session here for these guys even more critical. I was taking a look at some stats in between the Cota Shell and Trofeo Pirelli qualifying here. And if you go back to the Cota Shell, yesterday's results from Dan Cornish and Gray Favre, both of them had the fastest laps during the race. They would win the race and set pole here today in this qualifying session. If you look at the same from yesterday, it was Manny Franco and Justin Rothberg who set fastest lap in the race, won the race. So can they pick up pole here this morning? We talked to Manny in his winner's interview yesterday, and he said it was just a magical day. He got into that flow. He's going to look to pick up that here today in qualifying.
It was Brian Kaminsky who put the car on pole yesterday for the Trofeo Pirelli&AM class, getting swamped off the start, Brian. That's what resulted in him dropping back a few positions, never really able to get back up. And it was that sort of chaotic start that allowed Justin Rothberg to get to the front, clear air. That's what gave him the advantage to set the fast lap and race.
I think qualifying is so important in Ferrari Challenge. All the cars basically identical. The only difference is what your engineer allows you to do and what changes he's going to make for you to try to add your personal preferences to the mix. Other than that, same horsepower, same braking capability. You can adjust the aero a little bit in the rear wing, but you need to start up front. Otherwise, your work is incredibly difficult. You only have 30 minutes to make up any time you lose. or anytime you lost in qualifying with a poor qualifying position.
Yeah, the throttle pedal goes all the way down the same amount on all of these cars. There is no innate advantage car to car. It depends on what setup changes your crew can make and, well, what setup changes you can do to yourself as a driver to try and figure out how to take this track better. We're watching Tony Davis right now, whose car has got some bright yellow accents on it, Lakeside Pyro Axe on the side of the car. It's because this man likes fireworks, so he's going to try and set a few during this qualifying session, see if he can't pick up some bonus points. Tony, who came into the series last year as a complete newbie, won the Cota-AM class. He skipped a ladder rung, and now he's in Trofeo Pirelli&AM, and guess what? It's where he should be. He's very competitive in this class. 4th in the first round of the championship, 3rd in the second with the fastest lap, 5th yesterday. He wants another trophy out of Texas.
I'm sure he tried to convince them to just move him up to Cota Shell. You know, we talked about this yesterday. Be careful what you wish for. You want to do well, you want to win races, but if you do too well, and I think it's the proper thing, and I think that's the thing that's great about this series. You look at Cota Shell AM, Trofeo Pirelli, Trofeo Pirelli&AM. You've got 4 different places that you can land, and the officials do a great job of analyzing the data, your lap times, your finishes, to determine where you place. And a lot of times, it's like any other sport. If you play pickleball, let's say, you play better against a better player.
Yeah.
And I had to get pickleball in from my friend John Walsh, who said I used too many sports analogies. So figured we'd grab an obscure one, right?
It's all about plinking. You've got to be gentle at first and figure out just how to hit the ball before you can go ahead and start slamming it at people.
Which is exactly what these drivers need to do right now. They need to build those Pirellis up to temperature and pressure so they can get the most out of them. What did we see in the previous qualifying sessions? It's really about the last 5 minutes or so of the session where you've got a good car underneath you and you really set the lap. Be patient, build them up progressively, and then once you realize they're there, you've got to pounce.
Well, and you're talking about being progressively patient. The man who on screen just a moment ago was Mark Musso. He's looking at this thinking long-term championship length season. First in the first race, didn't have a second great race at Homestead, but was second yesterday, won at Circuit of the Americas last year. Mark Musso knows how to win, and he also knows when you're going to qualify, you're not going to set pole on your fast lap when you haven't been out on track and it's completely different and things are different. He's Canadian. He's calm. He's cool. He's collected. And by the way, the sticker on the back of his car, I know you just saw a glimpse of it, Brian, and it says, "I love my wife." There's some subtext in there when you get up close.
What's it say?
I love it when my wife lets me drive race cars.
No, there you go.
Yes. So
completely different racetrack. You alluded to it a moment ago, and Amanda was talking about the wind. I just looked it up. It's a pretty steady 23 to 24 mile an hour wind right now, gusting up to 30. Think about what that's going to do to the race car. If it's a side load like you get in the carousel and other places here, it literally is going to want to move the car to the side. You know when you drive down the interstate and you go past an 18-wheeler, that wake of air coming off of it moves you to the side, or if you've driven through the plains where it's flat and the wind is blowing, the car moves side to side. The race car is going to do the same thing. Down the back straightaway out of turn 11 to turn 12, you're going to get the advantage, in air quotes, pardon the pun, of that tailwind pushing you down the straightaway. But you'd better be ready for the brake zone on the other end because you're going to have more speed when you get there than you did yesterday. Your braking marker is going to change, and the cool air is going to allow that power plant in the back, that twin turbo Ferrari engine in the back, to produce more horsepower, a little push from Mother Nature down the straightaway. Better be ready for the brake pedal at the end.
It's going to be a big difference, especially compared to what we saw in Cota Shell, because the progression of these drivers is natural in their lap times as well. So as we go through the qualifying sessions, we started off with the slowest class. Well, now we're up to the second quickest class. So these guys are going to be going just that little bit quicker when they get into the brake zone.
What I see right now is exactly what we saw in Cota Shell, Shay. I'm looking at lap times right now that are making huge changes. Tony Davis was on the pole. Now Porter has jumped up there. Now we're starting to get into indicative lap times. things like we saw yesterday. They're starting to get there, but it's still going to take a while.
Michael Porter jumped up to the top, Brian, because he had a great draft off of Chuck Whittle, but unfortunately he couldn't get the pass done on Whittle before going into turn one, massively compromised his line going into turn one, and I know there's a million different lines to choose through for turn one, not the one that Michael Porter wanted to try and set a fast lap. He's backed out of it. He's going to go again in the next lap.
Good call on Porter's part to say, you know what, I am not going to risk it all for a qualifying lap and throw this thing in there. The term that I hate more than anything in racing is send it. We may have heard that yesterday. To me, send it is like a drive-by shooting, where nobody cares about what the result is, and we don't like drive-by shootings, right? So I don't like send it, but he looked at that opportunity and realized it wasn't an opportunity at all. It was a trick, and consequently didn't take the bait, kept it out there and said, hey, we've got another lap coming. We've got time to do this as Kaminsky moves to the top.
Brian Kaminsky with a 2:09.1012. That's a very good opening lap. Tony Davis is currently in second, and then Michael Porter. But we are going to see these times change dramatically as people get their first flying lap, their real, genuine first flying lap into place. Mark Muzo now up into third, as who was that who just crossed the line? Alfred Caiola up into fourth now. So Ferrari of Long Island represented within the top five. Good to see Alfred back up there. He was actually flagged in yesterday's race, Brian, with the jump start. So Alfred with the time penalty at the end of the race, moving him back a position.
You ever go to Vegas?
Once.
You ever play a slot machine?
Twice. No.
Top 5, top 6 is going to look like a slot machine here in just a second. They're just going to be rolling through as these lap times change. Now's the time. Now's the magical time to get it done. We're inside 7 minutes. We've seen it already. Kaminsky up top. It was a big jump from the 2:11 that Davis had down to a 2:09 that Kaminsky has now, and we're just going to continue to see those numbers roll at the top.
Brad Favre, the father of our Copa Shell pole sitter Gray, has gone into the third position at 2:09.977. So Dad trying to follow up on what son was able to accomplish earlier on today. Son getting his first win in yesterday's race. Got a lap time now from Cookie, the Cookie Monster, Brian Cook, our resident Australian in this championship. He has done a time good enough for 1.2 seconds off pole from his opening. Let's see what yesterday's winner and fast lap accomplisher could get. It's third for Justin Rothberg so far. It's a good start. Ferrari of Palm Beach. As McCade Wang is coming around to complete his first lap. Let's see what the man for Ferrari of Vancouver can accomplish.
Problem in yesterday's race, but you get back on the horse, so to speak, and we can say that since we're in Texas.
And literally as
and
well.
Literally, yeah.
Driving Ferraris with the prancing horse. McCade Wang, not a particularly fast lap for that first one, so maybe that was his warm-up one. He did leave the pits a bit later than everyone else.
He's so funny. I was talking to him in the paddock the day before yesterday, and he said, yeah, I want to be better. And I said, well, do you play any other sports? And he said, well, I play golf. And I said, what's your handicap? He said, 4.
Which is a pretty decent handicap.
I wanted
right?
to hit him, but he's really tall. I couldn't reach him. But anyway, he said 4, and I said, well, how long did it take you to get there? And he said, well, years. And I said, then stop being so impatient. Driving the race car is like playing golf. All those little muscle memory things that you've got to keep in mind and that you learn throughout the experiences that you get. You're going to have to be patient. It's going to take a while.
Brian Kaminsky is impatient, did his one and done, pulled into the pit lane. I really hope that was a tire pressure adjustment because he has just been pipped for pole position. Jay Logan is now the fastest car out on the track, 2:08.655, 3/10 better than the lap from Brian Kaminsky. He does still have time to get back out there and do one more lap, assuming they do a tire pressure adjustment for the Ferrari of Long Island driver. With 4 minutes, 20 seconds left in this session, here comes Michael Porter, rounding out turn 19, getting a good line.
Nice.
Wow, brake discs well aglow. Puts the pedal down, uses up some curbing. Good not to hit the sausage curbs on the outside, though, and he jumps up to 4th. Good lap for Michael Porter.
Great entry into turn 20 there. Again, we talked about this earlier. Nice smooth hands, trading braking for steering. Rolled it in there. You saw the brake rotors, kind of the color dissipate as he turned in. Car nice and smooth. Not a lot of steering corrections on the way in or out, and it jumps him up to 4th.
Justin Rothberg crosses the line. Where does he move to? P7 for yesterday's race winner.
So watching Brian Kaminsky come into the pits, did it kind of remind you of Pirelli&AM earlier when we saw Lisa Clark say, okay, that's what I've got? She came in, and then what happened the very next lap?
She got her lap beat.
Yep.
Yep, that's exactly where I went with that. But Kaminsky does still have time to get out of the pits, so there could be a response from the Ferrari Long Island driver.
Have to get those tire pressures adjusted quickly and get him back out there if that's something they want to do.
Oh, Mark
Now.
Musso with traffic. Who was that? It was Nathan Schweigart, and Musso goes well off the track, still off the track. He's trying to set a faster lap time. He's going to be very frustrated by car number 8 right in front of him, but Nathan Schweigart doing nothing wrong, running his own qualifying session. Mark Musso crosses the line, and does he improve? No, he does not. That lap time was a 2:10.372. Think he lost a second there?
Well, I know he lost time there, but he might have lost the lap anyway. It depends on how the officials look at it. He was obviously out of track limits, and the question would be, did the other car contribute to that? And it doesn't matter. It wasn't a fast lap anyway. So, but, you know, that's the thing they're going to look at, especially in qualifying. You need to drive on the marked racetrack. You and I talked about this yesterday. That is the point of the competition.
Yes.
You don't get to create your own and where you think you should be. You've got to drive on the same racetrack that everybody else drives, and
How
especially
many
there.
people would go straight through the S's if that were the case?
Well, there was a series that raced here about a month ago that kind of allowed people to drive wherever they wanted to in certain places of the racetrack, and I think chaos and mayhem would be the two words that come to mind when I think about that.
And we should clarify, track limits exist because of the safety of the racetrack as it was designed. So if you're going to take liberties to go your own way, let's say, that's going to result in you crashing in a manner that the track designers didn't account for.
Yeah, I mean, track limits exist, first of all, because of what I was saying. Hey, you know, you've got to run here because everybody has to run here. This is the design of the racetrack. This is the challenge that's been laid out ahead of you. And then the designers go, okay, what challenge did we lay out? And then you, as you said, Shay, you place the safety barriers based upon the layout of the racetrack, not the extra asphalt that's out there. It's the trajectories and the angles that running on the marked racing surface bring. And when you change all of those because you decided to run on a different racetrack than everybody else, then you take matters into your own hands as far as safety goes, because the barriers and those beneficial gravel traps and tire barriers and runoff areas and guardrails, they're not where they need to be if you approach them at a different angle.
Michael Porter looks like he's slowed down quite a bit, perhaps coming into the pits this time around. We have not yet seen Brian Kaminsky back out on the circuit. He is now down to P4 because Brian Cook has jumped way up the charts and is now just a 10th off the pole time. So if Brian Cook can lay down another fast lap, he could potentially steal this pole away. In third, it's now Brad Favre. So a really good lap for Ferrari of San Francisco. Kaminsky in fourth, Tony Davis P5, and then Michael Porter in the sixth position. It's Alfred Kaiola in seventh with 15 seconds to go. Is Cookie on another one? He could be. No, he's out of it. So Brian Cook, happy with his position, but Brad Favre goes up and steals the front row away. He's now in second. No, Cook had his time disallowed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think
dropped
there were a
back
couple
down.
of times that were disallowed. I've seen changes. Even Brian Kaminsky moved on the timing chart a few moments ago, and he's not on the racetrack, and that confused me. So there's some laps that have been disallowed. And that's that track limits issue that we were talking about. The officials will look at it. They'll go back and look at a replay from the closed circuit television cameras that the racetrack has, as well as the television cameras that we're viewing. And if they find you out there, they're going to pull the lap. It's an unfair advantage.
Seeing the checkered flag on the circuit, Michael Porter, Brian Cook, Chuck Whittle in the pit lane. Jay Logan, our pole sitter for race number 4 of the season. Mark Musso is still out there. He has circulated the entirety of this session. Is he still on a flyer? He's still pushing. Look at the body language of that car.
He's digging, and as you said, Shay, you can see it in the language of the car, as you said. But here's the thing. You got to be honest with yourself. Am I going to get this done? What's my predictive saying on my dash? Is it telling me I'm going quicker or not? Because if you're not, you're just burning up Pirelli rubber that you may very well need come race time.
but I trust Mark Musso. I talked about it earlier. He knows how to win in this series. He knows how to win at this track. He knows what kind of car he has under him. And remember, he caught traffic earlier on. He could be frustrated. He could be driving angry right now. And Mark Musso, when he gets in that kind of a zone, he's got speed. What does Mark have? As he comes across the line, he jumps up to 4th. Great lap for Mark. He almost doubled his starting position.
He was wheeling it. The car was moving around all over the place. Even at the entry into turn 20, he had a little bit of rotation, a little bit of oversteer, if you would, on the way in. Got that gathered up, picked up the throttle, able to put that Ferrari horsepower to the ground, and finished with a good lap.
All right, Michael Mathis is diving into the pit lane, which means that the only car that has not yet seen the checkered flag is Brad Favre. I don't know if he is on a fast lap, though. I think we might be able to say, Jay Logan, welcome to Ferrari Challenge and welcome to being on pole position, because he has raced in the series before in the Copa Shell class. That was last year. Brad Favre is coming in the pits. So yes, Jay Logan, welcome to being on pole. We'll have to find out what it's like for him to get a first pole position for Ferrari of Boardwalk here at Circuit of the Americas. After missing the 2 rounds at Homestead, he finished 8th in yesterday's race. This is the perfect place to start from.
Man, hats off, because what a great job. You talk about 8th yesterday, and obviously the competition here is fierce. We talk about how equal these cars are. Race time, it's a tough job to pick up numerous positions. And you go, well, 8th isn't that good. Well, obviously, he knows how to drive the car. And it could be, too, that the team has found something that they were able to improve on and give him a better car today. Certainly the engineering staff looked at this racetrack, the weather, and the differences, and were able to kind of come up with a new plan and give him a new car, and then he was able to execute. It's the team analogy once again. If your linemen don't block, you can't throw the completions. You're not Tom Brady without the linemen, right? So
big round of applause for Jay as he gets out of the car, and most important part, celebrating with people who care about you, and in this case, his crew who gave him that car.
Yep.
That's the important part that you were just talking about. But Boardwalk Ferrari, very, very happy for their driver. Pleased to see him getting out of the car. And you can tell the smile already, just from his eyes, the glimpses that you get through the helmet visor.
Well, I can tell he's smiling because he's on pole. I mean, I don't know a race car driver in the world that would be frustrated.
Mark Musso touring back around into the pit lane. Looks like Alfred Caiola behind him. This was an interesting session because so many drivers stayed out the entirety of the time, whereas we had Brian Kaminsky, who came into the pits fairly early on, might be saving tires, but Jay Logan did exactly what it took. Amanda's got him.
Jay, you qualified 7th yesterday. You sneaked this pole by roughly 1/10 of a second. How were you able to make this jump here today to the pole position?
You know, it's a lot of work. I mean, a lot of credit to the coach and the team. We worked on it all week, came to practice about a week ago, and, you know, just went over data this morning again and got an amazing coach and amazing team. So that's what it took. And I just, like they told me, just send it. So, yeah.
I think that's exactly what you did. Executed perfectly. Congrats, Jay.
Congrats indeed to Jay Logan, as he will be starting on the front row of the Trofeo Pirelli&AM category. We still have one more class to figure out the positions of for today's race, but for AM, it is Jay Logan ahead of Brad Favre. So front row for both of the Favres for today's race. Brian Kaminsky starting P3 with Mark Musso alongside of him. It's Tony Davis and Michael Porter for that third row of the grid. They'll be fun to watch off the green flag. Alfred Caiola and Justin Rothberg. Then we find Brian Cook, who had his time disallowed. It was good enough for second for him. He's starting 9th with Michael Mathis for company. Chuck Whittle and McCade Wang are on the 6th row of the grid. And then is Nathan Schweigart. So it's going to be a very busy start of the race for our Trofeo Pirelli&AM drivers. But the good news is they made it through qualifying.
Well, and interesting, 14 cars listed there, but Lawrence Wynn, no time. Will he start the race? Because here's what happened, Shay. Think about it. We talked about this yesterday. 14 was an even number of rows, right?
There you go.
If it's 13, then the pole sitter in Trofeo Pirelli&AM will actually start driver's right beside the last place Trofeo Pirelli&AM car.
And that's what we need to keep an eye on in this session. Do all of the cars that are listed on timing, all 13 of the Trofeo Pirelli cars, do they all set a lap time? Do they all start this race? Because that's going to make the big difference.
Let me raise my hand.
It's fine. No, I covered for you.
I just made a mistake.
I covered for you.
Yeah, you did.
It's good.
Yeah.
See, partners, we got this.
Thanks.
We're good.
Thanks for having my back.
There's a new nose on the front of Carlos de Quesada's number 24 because of some contact that he had yesterday in the race. Who was it that he just happened to nudge? Do you remember that issue that we saw out on track? And there were carbon shards everywhere?
Calvin Fish would call that argy-bargy.
It's not my trademark
Yeah,
slogan.
mine either, so I don't
can't
use
say
it
that.
either. But
No.
I don't remember because there was a little bit of that at the start for sure.
Yep.
And then there was a little bit later because we had a group of 3 or 4 cars together.
Exactly. Joe Rubo was almost the victim of a dive bombing. He managed to stay safe as his family will be very relieved as he goes around. And does he hit the guardrail? I think he did. Right front damage on that car. It's all right, Joe. Collect your thoughts, get it pointed back in the right direction, engage first gear as he does, wait for a safe opportunity, and rejoin. Beautiful demonstration of what to do when things go wrong.
Except I'm looking at the steering wheel right now, Shay, and
It's a little to the right.
it's a little to the right.
The
And
alignment is slightly off.
I'm thinking the splitter on the right front is not where it needs to be either.
No, it's definitely not. But Joe handled that
Yep.
in an extraordinary manner because he did exactly what you should do, but it's not what you remember how to do. Because when stuff goes wrong, the panic button tends to sit in. It is a right front splitter hanging down. Very well picked up, Brian. Here we go. Another look at this. He goes in under braking, turns in to turn 11. Manages to get a little too much curbing, perhaps?
Yep.
No, stayed off the
Horsepower.
curbing entirely. Too much right foot.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, we talked about the patience aspect of going out and building up the speed gradually and gradually. He has a car in front of him that he may have said, I need to stay with that car so I can get a tow when it's time to go or whatever. It may have been one of those things that they felt that the traction control setting that they had for those outlaps was fine and it would be okay. But with the limited grip, you either have to be a little more patient or a little more traction control until you know that you've got things back up and then make the adjustments. It's a mistake, a small mistake, but it has big consequences. I don't believe that the suspension is correct because you saw the steering wheel and obviously there's bodywork damage. You can't work on the car during qualifying. So what he has is what he has.
So Joe Rubo will not be qualifying, but he did still go out. He will still be starting the race. And Joe, who is coached by Ryan Eversley, a very accomplished coach, it's one of his buds too. It's a great thing. And for his family who's here at the track, his wife Ashley and his daughter Taylor, who's here this weekend, his other daughter Danielle, not at the track. Don't worry, it's a small hiccup. You can still win a race as long as you start it. It doesn't matter where you started from.
Here at Cota, you could probably start last and win it if it all goes wrong in turn 1 at the start, right? I mean, we certainly have seen excitement in the past, but as you pointed out, he does the right thing. He makes the small mistake, but he doesn't make it bigger.
Yes.
He doesn't roll back into traffic. He doesn't put it in gear and try to get right back in and pull out in front of somebody. He's patient. He says, you know what? He raises his hand like I did a minute ago when I screwed up, and just says, all right, I made 1. Let's not turn 1 into 2.
Exactly.
And off he goes. I'll be interested to see if they can get him out. When I looked at the steering wheel, it's off a little bit. That tells me he's got suspension damage. And you can't really even touch the car. So the crew can't just reach down and pull that front splitter off because they can't touch it at all. So I believe, you kind of look at that and go, all right, it's not day done, it's session done.
Exactly, and that's the biggest thing. Jason McCarthy yesterday, if you remember in the race, ran less rear wing than his competitors, and his car was busy. His hands were moving all over the place during the entirety of that race. I'm wondering if maybe they decided to give Jason a little bit more wing for this morning session because the track conditions are completely unknown to these drivers. I've been harping on it all morning, but the fact is we got a lot of rain. There's not the same amount of rubber down as when they raced the Trofeo Pirelli category, getting the first run in yesterday's race. It's very different out there.
It is, and I hope they gave him more wing too, because yesterday it looked like a handful, and obviously with lower grip today, you're going to want that downforce and the cooler air and the way the barometer is and all of that, you're going to get better downforce today anyway. So take advantage of what you've got. But here's what's interesting to me, Shay. What we've been saying in the last 3 qualifying sessions that we've seen was really 7 minutes in is when the times, or 7 minutes to go is when the time started. You see the difference in the experience of the drivers. This is the most experienced group of drivers that are out there. And when have the times come? A good 2 minutes earlier, we've started to see them get there, down there.
Manny Franco is now out on the circuit, fast lap in yesterday's race and the victory. Matt Krzyzewski is going to be the one to watch, though, because yesterday he felt a bit aggrieved at losing his pole position to a win. He fought back to second, and Matt Krzyzewski's coach is none other than Alessandro Balzan. So when you get someone of that mentality, Alessandro knows how to win. He knows how to keep people calm, but he also knows, hey, we're going for a championship this year. I want the point for pole.
I love the way you're using your hands right there, like Alessandro would do. But did you get your Manny Franco T-shirt yesterday?
No, I did not. I need to find one of those.
I know. I was like, Shay would be all over that. If she can get a hold of one, she will.
Amanda, you were down there celebrating with Manny Franco. What was the environment like?
Oh man, he had a fan club, guys. I mean, I don't know if you have a traveling fan club, but I'm going to figure out how to get my entourage to the next race. But just adding on to Manny Franco, Alessandro Balzan, they are actually co-drivers in another series together. And so Alessandro knows exactly what Manny Franco can do as well. But I remember talking to Manny yesterday, and he just talked about what he loves about Cota, and just that this place has every kind of corner. And I know I mentioned it in the show yesterday, but he specifically talked about the S's and how you have to go slower than you think that you have to. Brian, does that still apply here today with these conditions?
Well, it does it in the beginning, especially until you get the tire temperature and the pressures like we've talked about all day long. But after that, it's going to be the same. I mean, he needs to have the same mindset as he approaches it, probably overslowed in the beginning, and then just put it right back online. He's going to find a little extra grip today once the tires get there, because he's going to have a little more downforce, but he's got to be cognizant of the horsepower that he has. He's going to have a little more of that because of the weather conditions. So that squeeze back on the throttle when he decides it's time to go back to it needs to be even more progressive today. They need to make sure that their traction control is set. Remember, it's a 2-level traction control. One kind of determines when the traction control kicks in. Almost think of it as, how much do I want to let it slide before it kicks in? Some drivers will let it slide a little bit more. And then the next setting is, okay, when it does kick in, how much does it kick in? So that's going to be really one of the adjustments that the drivers are going to have to work on today.
And the brake bias, how much do you set it front to rear? Because that makes a big difference too, as Manny gets a bit squiggly going over the curbs, almost entirely over the curbs. Driver's right going into turn 20, and then on the exit curbs, does he go fast enough? No, it's Matt Krzyzewski.
Oh, but look.
And they are separated by 9 thousandths of a second. That is the time that you can't replicate on a stopwatch.
No, and that's what I say to people all the time when they talk about tenths of a second. Pick up your watch.
Okay.
Or your phone.
Wait for it.
Move it to phone setting.
Yep.
Then go to stopwatch and hit it and stop it as fast as you can. 0.14.
Yep.
Yeah, I can occasionally do maybe a skosh better, but
I can do a skosh better.
0.09?
Nope.
There's no way.
Nope.
I mean, it is as fast as you can get it done, and that is nothing. That was 2 feet later in a brake zone, a quarter of a mile an hour pulled through a 100-foot radius of a corner or something like that. It's imperceptible to the eye.
On one of 20 corners around this circuit. That's the difference that it makes. Now, Jason McCarthy has decided, I can do what I can do. I'm pitting. He's come into the pits. We've seen this before, and it hasn't worked out for people. Oh, all right, Brian, I'm impressed. He just did 800ths of a second. That's a good effort there.
That's just because I'm old and I shake a lot.
800ths of a second takes you down to 7th place in this qualifying to cover the front of the grid. No, it takes
crazy close.
It's crazy close. 0.8.
I mean, basically the top 8 cars are a second.
Yeah.
Custodio Toledo is 1.001, so 1 1/1000th of a second off the pole in 8th position.
That is crazy.
And we got time. We got 4 minutes.
We've still got 4 minutes, as you rightly say. Jason McCarthy is now down to 4th as Martin Burrows has come to play. The Ferrari of Quebec driver up to P3. Glad to see Martin up at the front end of the field, the sharp and pointy end, where he belongs. He is a former champion of this series. So for Martin coming in to this race weekend after a not great Homestead, it was very frustrating for him. Got caught up in one of the races, no fault of his own. Manny Franco having another go at it, and he does it.
It's on. I mean, my question is, how long can it last? Because we started to see these fast lap times, like I said, with 8 or 9 minutes to go. It was with 7 minutes to go with the other series. Eventually, we're going to get to the peak of the Pirelli tire. I would think that would be happening pretty soon. I wouldn't expect to see these drivers able to put faster laps in, because they've already got 3 or 4 on the tires right now. But you never know. Where there's a will, there's a way sometimes.
Well, and looking at the last laps across the line, Manny Franco went purple, which was fastest overall. Matt Krzyzewski was personal best. Martin Burrows was personal best. Jeremy Clark was personal best. Dave Musial 2.0 personal best, and Roberto Perena personal best. As Matt Krzyzewski into the pit lane. It will be P2 for the man from upstate New York.
Kind of threw up his hands and said, that's all I've got. And you know what? Good call.
Fair on him.
You got to race,
Yep.
right? You have to race. And that's the thing you cannot lose sight of. These are the tires that you're going to start the race on more than likely. And you got to have a tire that's going to take you through the 30 minutes. So, you know, you kind of pay me now or pay me later kind of thing. And, hey, starting on the front row, not a bad place to be outside the front row, headed down into turn 1. If he can stay there, he has a decent position for turn 2. As you see, Martin Burrows going through right now, that big sweeping right-hander. So if you can stay on the outside, you know, you might be okay. And if you've got better rubber on the car in the long run, you certainly may have the advantage.
Martin Burrows with his time disallowed. I would imagine that's for track limits. Drops him back to 11th in class, but Martin's still out there. He's got the opportunity to do one more lap at the very least, depending on where he is on the track. Just under 2 minutes remaining in this qualifying session. Manny Franco needs to be told, pit now, you're not going to get better. And by the way, no one is going to trouble you at the moment. We're not seeing times that are anywhere near that 2:07.589 as he did the last time around. Manny Franco comes into the pits.
Obviously, they have you tuned into their radio channel, and
Hello, Manny.
you just told Manny to pit, which he did. I think you're right, Shay. I mean, you look at the competitors behind, who's in the pit lane, who's giving up the ghost, who lost a lap because of track limits, and you're like, more than likely you're fine. Let's not burn up the tire. Let's have something to go race with.
Exactly.
Good call. An excellent lap by Manny Franco.
And Manny is one of those people who not only is looking at this in terms of a full season championship, he's in a bit of a hole after Homestead because he came out of Homestead with 11 points, whereas Roberto Perena came out with 29. Both Matt Krzyzewski and Jason McCarthy came out with 18. So Manny was already 7 points down. He did everything he needed yesterday, the fast lap and the race win. All right, he didn't get the pole, so there was a point there that went the way of his competition. But he got those valuable 15 points. So Manny Franco looking at this going, all right, if I get pole today, I get fast lap, and I get race win, all of a sudden I'm championship contender.
Yeah, he's back in it, right? Dylan Medler still out there, and he is still pushing hard through turn 19. Uses up all the apex curb, all the track out curb. Now he's got to get both in and out of 20. If he can get out of 20, he's got another lap.
Yeah, he does. Dylan Medler, right foot down over the curbing, but keeps his left side wheels on the curb, so that's going to be okay. Was that an improvement for Medler? No, it was not even personal best. So he's got this one if he's still on it. Meanwhile, out on the circuit, that is Michael Petramalo coming through turn 20 now, car number 38, champion in last year's running. And his first ever season, Ferrari of Seattle driver, will start 10th.
I don't know if Medler was a little farther over than you think he was. From my point of view, he was a little farther than he should have been. Here's the problem with turn 20. If they call you there, you lose the lap that you're on, and you're going to more than likely lose the next lap because you got an advantage as you started. It doesn't matter, again, because the lap wasn't what he needed. But 20 is one of those corners that we talked about in the track map. I mean, it can bless you in a couple of ways. You can be on a great lap, have a great exit, and that lap is awesome, and it also gives you a great start for the next one. But if the officials ever look at it and go, nah, you used a little too much there, you're going to lose that great lap that you were on, and they're going to make sure that you don't have an advantage to start the next one. They'll pull both of them.
Which is fair. That's how
fair.
it should be. But I'm just looking at the last lap times. No one has improved on their last lap time.
You get to that point.
Yep.
We talked about it, and
The
it
peak
says
and the drop.
the go fast tank is empty.
Yes. Yep. You got to go replenish it. You got to go up to hospitality and enjoy Ferrari Challenge in all of its glory.
I don't need to go up to hospitality. I gained 13 pounds yesterday. I'm pretty sure up there at just lunch.
Well, that was because you just had them directly injected into you.
Exactly.
Yes. No, these weekends are so wonderful, and the thing I'm excited most for next is what comes exactly next. The driver's briefing, where everybody comes into our space, not into our booth. Gosh, that would be very
that'd be
crammed
cramped.
and not smell too great. But they come in here, they get to talk to the race director, and Todd Snyder, our race director, does videos of good passes and not so good passes to try and teach, because this whole series, it's about educating. It's about having fun.
Do you think he has some from yesterday?
Oh, I'm sure he does. I love Todd. Well, it's another pole position for Manny Franco. He's used to getting the pole awards, but he doesn't have the beautiful new style one from this year. So we'll have to see if he's as excited about this one as he was about the ones last year.
My question is, if Manny Franco manages to win today's race, will we see the same Manny Franco fan club t-shirts, or is there another one for today? And
there should be different ones because it's a red pole award typically on the first day and a yellow one on the second. Amanda, what do you think? Do you think Manny was surprised by yesterday's fan shirts? Is he expecting new ones today?
Well, I guess the first question to you, Manny, listening to Shay, you had a fan club yesterday with some T-shirts. Have you seen what they're wearing today?
I'm not going to know. I'm not going to find out until I hop out of the car.
You nipped that pole by just roughly 100th of a second. Manny, you got into a magical flow here yesterday. What would you call qualifying?
Qualifying was difficult with the tires. Them being cold, it was quite difficult. But everything worked out. There was a couple corners where, watching video and watching data that I decided to try to take. So for some corners, it was a first time for me. So I'm happy with the result. I see that it's really close, but it's a great day today, and it's a great way to start race too.
And then just one more question, and Shay, this is for you too. You take a look at that pole position plaque. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I mean, these things are awesome. I always enjoy, doing my best and getting pole position. It's always so fantastic to do it in a track where, Formula One hosts their Grand Prix here in the U.S. And for me today, pole position is a fantastic thing. So.
Congratulations.
The trophies this year are just so cool. They really are. The Homestead one, now the Circuit of the Americas one. I can't wait to see them go along as the season progresses.
And I know we were talking about this yesterday. They look like you could hang them on your Christmas tree. You're probably going to talk to the series and see if you can get a couple just for.
You never know. You never know if some might fall off the truck. But for Manny Franco, it's a pole position award. And Matt Krzyzewski coming over to Manny and saying, this close, and it was. Jason McCarthy saving some tires from today's qualifying, starts alongside Jeremy Clark. It's 2.0, and Roberto Perena in the third row of the grid. Then we find Custodio Toledo and Dylan Medler, and all Miami, row number 4, Carlos de Quesada and Michael Petramalo making up the top 10. In the 11th position, we've got Martin Burrows, the time disallowed after he set a time quick enough to be third. Brandon Cruz will start alongside him, and no time for Joe Rubo, but Joe Rubo will be cleared to start the race. So, Brian, it's as you said, it's going to be an odd start and outside for our Copachel and pole sitter.
Thank you for getting back to the mistake I made and telling me that it was going to be okay. I appreciate that. Yeah, I had the two classes backwards, but again, that odd number makes it interesting, so to speak, for Manny Franco there at the start with his pole position, but essentially from the opposite side of where you would think it would be.
For Jay Logan, it's going to be a different start than he's anticipating for a pole. But all that comes up later on in today. We've got the Copachel-AM race first for you, and then Trofeo Pirelli, and we really hope that we'll see you back here in just a couple hours' time.